What has been your biggest, I have to get the freak out of here as soon as possible life moment? Welcome back to another video, everyone. Thanks for being here today. Please make sure to subscribe and like this video if you enjoy our content. Now let's get into the thrills. Story 1. I had been sleep deprived for a few weeks during a very stressful summer. To pass the time, I'd go for long walks late at night, sometimes stopping at a gas station or supermarket to buy a snack. One night, at about 3 a.m., I had a sudden urge to walk to a 24-hour diner at the edge of my neighborhood. I was hungry and needed exercise. I walk in and the place is largely empty. The waitress comes, takes my order, and pours my coffee, then disappears into the kitchen. About 2 minutes later, the door opens and a man in a trench coat walks in. He's sitting nervously by the register. I see him pull out a gun, and immediately my mind starts racing. I quickly conclude that there are a few possibilities. He's gonna rob the diner and leave us unharmed. He's gonna rob the diner and shoot everyone inside. He's just gonna shoot everyone inside, just because. The waitress emerges from the kitchen, unable to see the gun from behind the counter. I'm the only customer who knows what's coming, and the weight of the world is on my shoulders. Table for one, she asks. The man shakes his head. I'm here to see Jeremy. Okay, I figure he's here to kill Jeremy. Although I wasn't a target, it was horrifying to be sitting so close. It was about to become a murder scene. I braced myself as best as I could for the sound of the gunshot as I sunk deep into my seat. I knew there was a good chance I'd be getting blood, skull, brains, and hair all over my clothing. I was too close not to. What if he shoots me too for being a witness? Complete terror. There was nowhere for me to go. Should I remain silent when he kills this guy? Should I yell out a warning to Jeremy and risk getting killed myself? I clutched a very sharp steak knife on the table and went with my gut instinct. I was probably gonna die, but I had to do this. I had to rush the shooter and stab him before he took the life of the cook. As I prepared to kill someone, Jeremy emerges from the kitchen with a wide grin on his face. You must be Frank. Out comes a wad of cash and up comes the gun, which is placed right on the counter. Looks even nicer than the pictures. Turns out they'd met to sell and purchase a gun from a Craigslist ad. There are so many less conspicuous ways to do this kind of stuff. My goodness. Does it seem like this seller has no idea how he comes across? I have a friend who is like this big dude, like 6'4" and easily 250 pounds. Doesn't seem to understand that saying, I'm here to see M, with no explanation is bloody terrifying, and obviously my doorman won't let you up. Story 2. A girlfriend of mine invited me to a business dinner. We were gonna sit down with our coworker and a potential investor. The coworker had an ambition to start a fashion and beauty related company, and my friend organized the dinner to introduce the two of them and allow her coworker to pitch to this guy. She asked me to join because she thought that I'd be interested in becoming a partner with the business also. Dinner is nice. Talk is mostly on message about the idea. Everyone's feeling pretty good. Then after dinner, my friend suggested we go back to the investor man's house for coffee because he lives like a mile from the restaurant. I thought it was odd, but I didn't want to dampen the rapport we had going. So we get back to his house, and it's like, who wants some wine? Take off your shoes. I'll put on some music, we can dance. Oh, you're taking selfies? No, let me take the camera and I'll tell you girls how to pose. Well, the music and dancing started. I asked my friend why this business dinner had become so informal, and then she finally told me, well, I'm trying to set them up so he'll be her sugar daddy. Turns out, my friend met this guy through a sugar daddy finder website. They'd met and talked, but my friend didn't really click with him. So she was introducing the coworker as a potential sugar baby, and he would fund her business idea in exchange for basically being his girlfriend. My I need to get the freak out of here moment was like after the 15th picture that the coworker said, OMG, no, I still look so bad. Can you take one more? This 40-something dude casually says, we should take some kissing pictures, trying to mask his excitement. I stone-faced replied, that's not happening, and pulled out my phone to call an Uber. I feel like maybe if OSB's friend had been more honest and said she just wanted her there to make sure she didn't get hurt, OP might have been a lot more understanding. I know I would go and make sure my friend is okay, even if I wasn't the most comfortable. That being said, I would make it super clear very early on I was not interested in their arrangement and was only there to make sure the random dude didn't hurt my friend. Story 3. This was back in Russia when I was 14. I decided that it was a good idea to walk home from a party at 2 a.m. in a rural area. We had a summer home dacha outside of Moscow, literally middle of nowhere. As I was walking, a car pulled up and a guy, looked to be in his 30s, asked me if I needed a ride. Being a moron, I said sure and got into his car. As he pulled up to the gates of our dacha community, he stopped and asked me if I wanted to come with him to a party. He was a construction worker in the area with his friends. My heart skipped a beat feet, and as I looked at the car door to look for an escape plan, I saw that the door handle was missing from the inside, so I had no way of opening the door. At this point, I felt my heart beating in my stomach, and I said, "No, sorry, my mom is waiting for me." All of a sudden, he said, "Well, motherhood is a sacred thing. You better go." He got out, walked around the car, and let me out. It was the last time that I hiked alone. I got insanely lucky that I wasn't murdered or abducted. Maybe this guy wasn't a bad person and was just trying to do a nice thing, but it sounds much more likely he was planning to murder OP, but held out because they said their mom was waiting for them. Almost like in Criminal Minds, where they randomly say the killer respects like people wanting their dad, and they don't kill them because the killer loved their dad too. Weird reasoning, but hey, it saved their life. Story 4. Chechnya in, I think, 1995. There were obvious a lot of those moments, but one that stood out was when I was walking back to the apartment block I was staying at, and I realized the entire block was not only empty, but all of the cars were moved out of the way, and there was a carpet laid about 20 feet in front of me. I have no idea what was under the carpet or why it was there, but it just felt so suspicious. And of course, my first instinct is to run away. The second I turn around, someone from far away opens fire at me, presumably a sniper, but could have been closer. I then heard shouting and screaming for men to run and get me. The shouts were far away. They knew they weren't going to be able to capture me. That freaking carpet, man. I won't ever forget that carpet. My biggest guess was that they built a hole under the carpet for people like me to fall into. And then they would capture and R-word you or torture you or whatever they would want. Lots of fricked up marauders and bandits in Grozny during the war. Story 5. When I was 19, my dad's girlfriend, who just got out of jail for murder, moved into our house. He didn't tell me she was out of jail or moving in. I moved out that day and couch hopped for a few months because freak that. Edit. To answer some of your questions, they've known each other since they were children. I don't claim at all to understand what was going through his head, but as far as I understand it, she has him actually believing she is innocent. They were dating before this happened. She went to jail because she was a nurse at an elderly home. One day, she decided it'd be a good idea to inject some old lady with insulin, killing her, and steal her credit cards. She's caught on tape at an ATM with them. That is literally all I know about the situation. No clue how she managed to get out early. I only learned these details from the local newspaper. Very hard for a 19-year-old to deal with. I thought that maybe he let her move in because the murder was out of self-defense, and the dad wanted to give the lady a second chance. That being said, what the girlfriend did was murder and fraud, done in cold blood. I don't know how the father thinks you can ever trust this lady again. And then to let her move into the house with your child? Talk about crappy priorities. Story 6. Every once in a while, your gut tells you something is up. I'm at a party and get that tingling in my gut telling me I'm not okay here. I finally just decided to leave with a few friends to chill at my place. A few hours later, I got a phone call from another friend asking if I was okay. Apparently, the house belonged to a guy who was affiliated with gangs. Some thugs tried to crash the party, and when they got kicked out, they started fighting people. A big fight breaks out and a few people end up in the hospital. Eventually, the house owner brought out a gun and shot a few rounds in the air, and that's when everyone scattered away from the area. The cops were called and people were arrested. Meanwhile, I left hours ago and was currently playing drunk video games with a couple of friends. Sometimes your gut's right. Story 7. I live on a cattle farm, and one time my dad, granddad, and I, had to move a bull into another pen so that we could give him medicine for his injured leg. To do this, we spread out in a fan and with what were basically big rattles on sticks to make noise and get him to go the other way. When we get to the open gate, the bull looks at it, looks some more, and decides there must be a better way to go. He turns, faces us. We make noise to get him to turn around, and the cycle repeats. Finally, he starts freaking out. He turns, faces directly at me, and jumps. I found my inner track star and climbed the fence to get away. Needless to say, we left him alone after that. I can only imagine the speed and adrenaline that must have taken over OP's body as they hightailed it out of there. I almost imagine like the Roadrunner just jumping in the air for a full second before sprinting out of there. Story 8. Hanging out with a friend and boyfriend in college. Bouncing around between parties. Turns out our friend's boyfriend was extremely Russian, and we end up at this party, where there are more people not speaking English than speaking it. Had a pretty good time. The boyfriend comes back inside from the backyard. He suggests that we leave immediately because there's going to be a fight and it's going to be bad. I look in the backyard and there are two guys screaming at each other in Russian, and the house is slowly emptying as people are running out back to take sides. Being in a Russian street fight is not on my bucket list. The three of us noped out real quick. Story 9. When I was little, me and my dad went out to check a fire not too far away. He used to be with the police and approached an officer, old colleague, on the scene if he was right, that it's a local fireworks store that was on fire. He was right. That was the moment he decided we should GTFO. Less than 100, 200 meters later, the whole thing went kaboom, which is when I myself was like, frick this crap. I dropped my bike and just ran away. I remember seeing the shockwave knocking out the windows of all the buildings street by street, which was cool until the wave hit me myself. Opie, I hope you and your dad weren't too hurt by the wave and that no one got seriously hurt. I think I wouldn't go chase a fire just because that's not my kind of scene, but props to your dad realizing y'all had to get out of there and fast. Story 10. Was in Japan for a solo vacation a few weeks ago. I got lost in Shibuya at like 3 a.m. in the morning and needed to find a train station. Some creepy Nigerian dude pops up and offers to direct me to the station. Sure, I say like the utter dumb girl I am. The guy takes me in the complete opposite direction. We end up at a hotel. He starts spouting BS about falling in love with me and wanting to spend the night with me. Nope, the frick out of there and took a taxi instead. Somebody commented, "You'll regret that." The guy was probably a real Nigerian prince. Story 11. I was 9 or so, about to go wading in a creek, when I noticed a snake in the water. Just a little snake, maybe a foot long, just hanging out mostly vertical, with its tail in some mud and reeds and stuff, and its nostrils sticking out of the water. Okay, no big deal. I just won't wade right there. I moved downstream 5 feet or so, and guess what? 2 little snakes right where I wanted to put my bare feet, and another one in the reeds. And most of those weren't reeds. Too long, don't read. I almost walked all over water moccasin daycare. Story 12. On my last flight home, I sat down next to a nice-looking woman. As soon as we were up in the air, she taps on my shoulder, motions for me to take my headphones off, and proceeds to ask me if I have time to hear about the Word of God. I spent a damn 7-hour flight trapped next to a Jehovah's Witness, learning about which Bible verses would solve my problems, because I was too scared to decline and risk smiting God while I was 40,000 feet up. I get being scared and not wanting to piss off God, but I think I would have said I had to pee and then just sat back down and instantly put my headphones back on. If God is mad because I want to nap in peace, I think they have bigger things to be stressed about. Story 13. When I was in Iraq 2 years ago visiting family and ISIS took over my city. Nope, the frick back to America on the next flight. Somebody commented, "Is your family doing okay?" And Opie responded, "Yeah, most of them were living in Duhok and the ones that were in Mosul moved in with the family in Duhok. Generally, they're doing well since they're protected by the Kurdish forces. But life in Kurdistan is crap right now. Everything's expensive, there are thousands of refugees everywhere, and Peshmergas are dying." Story 14. When I was 12, my next-door neighbor invited me to summer camp. Parents dropped me off. Realized immediately that the camp was odd, because the camp counselor took away my copy of Jane magazine. Then there was a camp-wide assembly where we prayed over a photo of George Bush and spoke in tongues. Turned out it was a Pentecostal sleepaway camp. I walked to town and called my parents from a gas station. Story 15. At an alternative club with my new boyfriend. I think we'd been dating for 3 weeks. Went to the bathroom and the graffiti on the wall started melting. So I confided in the new boyfriend. Turns out he put LSD in my pint because he wanted me to have a good night. If I wanted to have a good night on LSD, I would be on my couch, not surrounded by metalheads and emo kids. Cheers. Please tell me you broke up with that dude immediately and called a friend to get you home safely. Even if the person did it to be nice or you trust them. They drugged you, and that can never be forgiven. One time I was at a frat a few years back, and I had some of my friends drink, which had been roofied. I thankfully had nothing bad happen to me because some friends noticed I was off after 1 drink and took me home where I proceeded to get very sick until I eventually passed the hell out and woke up super confused. Story 16. I was digging a trench in my side yard during a massive flood to get the water moving again. I heard a loud series of cracking noises behind me and turned around to see branches falling off of a large oak tree. When the cracking got louder, I sprinted out toward the street. Twigs whipped my ears and back before I was safely away. So probably that. Story 17. When the meth came out at a party that already had some nasty vibes going around. Went right over the backyard fence and out the neighbor's gate without saying goodbye. Somebody commented, "Same thing happened to me but with crack." I walked straight out and got in my car. My friend called me judgy and went back to try it. He is now a crackhead. Story 18. A high school party, out in a field behind the host house. All was going well until some guy brought fireworks. Super dry season. Did not wait around to see what would happen. Heard the next day almost 2 acres went up in flames, and the OPP and fire crew paid him and his folks a visit. I hope this dude pays some type of fine because he ruined so much land. This reminds me of those weird gender reveals where people end up burning a crap ton of land when they could have just got a damn cake and figured it out. Story 19. I went to a summer camp. I have ADHD. Turns out my mom was confused with what special needs means and thought it included ADHD. So me and the Tourette's kid got along pretty great as we were the only two on the same level. Still the longest 2 weeks of my life. Story 20. Most terrifying moment of my life. My ex and I have been divorced for 7 years. When she came clean and admitted she'd be seeing another guy for almost a year, I've been sleeping with said guy in our bed while I was at work for a year. I noped out of there as fast as I could. It was no longer my house as far as I was concerned. My son is now 10. He was 3 at the time. When birthdays or other celebratory events come around, there's always one on mom's side and one on my side. He has cousins and friends and relatives on each side, but I still always get an invite to a birthday party or whatnot from the ex. Why? I don't know. And every single time I accepted, and I sucked it up and showed up and sat around and made small talk with Mr. New Boyfriend and all of their friends. Because I'll be damned if I'd be the parent that triggered the "how come daddy didn't come to my birthday party" conversations. But every single one of these events was agonizing. Nails on a blackboard, water torture agonizing. I mean, all I want to do is punch the guy. Yet here I am talking about the weather and the local sports team. Usually I figure if I made it past the cake to the presents and my son is running around shooting Nerf guns at the other kids, that's good enough. Time to make my escape. My son, thankfully, and at the same time, sadly, put me out of my misery. Last summer, over the weekend before his birthday party, he said to me, "Dad, here's mom's invite to my birthday party. It's gonna be small, just list of mom and mom's boyfriend's friends and their kids. But I get a few other plans. I'll see you next weekend at place in my friend's house where we too will be having a birthday party with a list of his friends." That's the one I'm looking forward to. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.